Hi, I'm Carol Quillen, CEO of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guile. Today is show number 404, in case you're keeping track, and on it we welcome architects Celeste Robbins, Grant Kirkpatrick, and Duan Tran, plus a fellow podcaster, Lisa Gralnek. And now here's your host, a man who for some reason has never posed for a centerfold, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's such a quaint concept, the centerfold, in this day and age of OnlyFans. Actor Burt Reynolds was famous for Smokey and the Bandit, being in a Cosmopolitan magazine centerfold, and for just being Burt Reynolds. He also owned a Jim Fox house in the Highlands area of North Carolina. Jim Fox was a true genius. He studied with legendary organic modernist Bruce Goff at the University of Oklahoma before starting his own firm in 1969. Throughout Highlands, he quickly became the go-to modernist, and he leaves behind a legacy of outstanding houses you can see at ncmodernist.org/Fox. But let's get back to Burt. Years ago in 2005, Burt was interviewed by Esquire for one of their What I've Learned articles. And I've always been struck by some of the wisdom in that list. Here's what Burt said. When I told my dad I was going into show business, he said, "If you ever bring any of those sissy boys around here, I'll shoot 'em and make a rug out of 'em for your mother."
Whoa!
But at the end of his life, whenever he saw Charles Nelson Riley, who's rather flamboyant, he'd kiss him on the cheek. When my dad said something to me, I said, "Yes, sir." I didn't question him, and I was 40 years old at the time. I can tell a young person where the mines are, but they're probably going to have to step on them anyway. I once went to group therapy. Everyone there blames someone else, their mother, their father, their agent. When it got to me, I said, "You're all full of shit. You're going to be here forever. Look in the mirror. You are responsible for every mistake you made." What makes me feel good? Old friends.
Amen, brother.
My autobiography is a good book, considering it was written in 3 days. That's the wisdom of Burt Reynolds. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Celeste Robbins is the principal of Robbins Architecture, a Chicago-based firm specializing in residential design, founded in 1995. A Cornell University graduate,
Go Big Red!
Celeste's award-winning work has been featured in Architectural Digest and Lux. She's the author of The Meaningful Modern Home, Soulful Architecture and Interiors, showcasing 9 of her notable projects. Welcome to the show, Celeste.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Celeste, let's start by clearing up some conflicting stories that we found in our deep dive research. One is that you were, as a child, constructing blanket forts, and the other one is that you were creating some sort of bunk bed pulley system that ultimately was going to involve a water feature. Now, which one is it?
Most of what you said is accurate, except that the pulley system was with blankets as well.
Okay.
To make the bed. And the water feature was to poke a hole through the wall and have water from the gutter come in and make a water feature.
Okay.
And how did your parents feel about that?
Well, I called my dad at work to tell him this great idea, which at the time you just didn't call your parents at work. That was just not a thing. But I was really pretty excited about this. So,
How old were you?
I don't even remember it. It's the stories my parents tell me. But I do remember making the pulley bed. I remember that.
But they didn't approve the gutter water feature, I assume.
They did not. But, I ended up putting a water feature in my home that when I designed it.
Okay.
And no client has asked for a water feature yet. And I feel like it's one of the highlights of
Hint, hint.
the designs. Yeah, hint, hint.
Yeah, you really should offer one in the package.
If it was only that easy,
Yeah,
all the
right.
things I could offer with air quotes, because you can't see me.
Well, I've got your new book here in front of me, The Meaningful Modern Home. And when I opened the table of contents, I was really surprised because I learned about some new cities like Warmth, Wyoming, Artistry, Illinois, and Balance, Idaho. And it took me a while to figure out that these were not actual cities, but themes of the houses that you had designed.
You know, you're the first person that's ever said that. I like your sort of creative way to view the world. That sounds like something I would do.
Yes, well, I would put a water feature in my bedroom too, but that's another story. These are 9 of your projects that you've done over the years. How did these clients come to you typically?
Most often word of mouth. The project that was in there for Jackson, Wyoming was my first house from the ground up.
Mhm.
That's called Home on the Ranch in the book. At the time, I was working out of my basement with 2 little kids in a playroom. And they asked me to do this house. I had been doing renovations on my own up until then. So that sort of built upon itself from there.
And I guess this, was very exciting for you. In Wyoming, did you have to go there a lot to see this place and supervise it? What was your role in it besides the design?
Well, the construction part, the main thing is having a good contractor that communicates well and to do good drawings so that they're not left with questions. So you don't have to go there and solve problems, but you've already done it on paper. From that project, once people saw that we could do things out of state, because that was almost 20 years ago. So it wasn't, at that time, there weren't even like PDFs on our blueprints. We had to scan them. So it was different to work out of state, but we managed it well. And then we got a little niche for ourselves, or myself, I guess, early on, doing second homes in beautiful areas, because so much of what I like to focus on is nature. I was asked to do homes because people loved their sites and wanted to make sure their home had some aspect, or like a lot of aspects to it.
Yes, exciting other cities like Inside Out, Illinois, Context Lake, Michigan, and Viewpoint, New York. Great towns, Celeste.
They sound so dreamy, don't they?
They
Yeah,
do.
they do. Yep.
They do.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you have 2 key philosophies. I'm wondering, there's some common ones like buy low, sell high, collect early, pay late. What are your 2 key philosophies?
2. I feel like I have a lot more than 2, but I would say nature never gets it wrong. So celebrate that and you'll stay timeless. And the other might be to remember to bring artistry and soul to what you're doing and not work yourself into a corner where you're following your own rules. Just have fun and, be an artist.
And, there is that pesky thing called a budget, right? So how do you work within that? I mean, these are very nice vacation homes, of course, but there's still a budget somewhere you've got to work with.
There's always a budget. No matter how big it is, there's always a point where somebody is comfortable and then they're not comfortable. And at the end of the day, if you want more projects, you need people to walk away happy, and they're not going to be happy if you didn't fit within their vision, which includes a budget. So I think what's important that I like to think is that our clients know that we're on their team and we are respecting their money. I don't care how much they have. It's what they choose to put on that particular project. I think they learn early on that we're always trying to get the most design that you can within, the parameters that someone set for you.
What are the challenges now post-pandemic in construction? Are there still material shortages or hard to find labor? What do you have to deal with the most in putting these houses together?
Cost. Cost is the biggest challenge right now. It's very expensive. And the difference between the cost of a new build versus a home you could buy, there's a big differential between those 2. And that's been a challenge because people, even with a nice net worth, still, it's hard to justify that. So I think that's a challenge still.
Is there still land around for people to put these nice homes on? Because I know in some areas of the country, it's hard to find lots.
I think it depends on where you're talking about. That's true. I think in Jackson Hole, it's kind of expanding out to the outer areas. So I guess it just depends on where you're looking.
Yeah, I would think Wyoming still has room somewhere.
Yeah. It's just it might be 1,000-acre ranch as opposed to a couple of acres to put your second house on.
I hope.
That kind
That's
of
the ones I
availability.
want.
Yeah. Yeah.
The 1,000-acre ranch.
Have you been commissioned yet to design one of these new trendy houses, which is the multifamily house, kind of like 4 or 5 buildings connected to each other?
No, I haven't. But we do a lot of empty nester houses, which have to ebb and flow from a couple to, their kids and in-laws. So I think that's kind of something we see a lot of.
Yes, I have a friend who bought a new house, and they were empty nesters. They were talking about expanding it to make, guest quarters. And they ultimately decided, since they only had guests a couple times a year, to basically build a bunk room in the basement where they could just stash the guests for a few days when they come.
Is the basement heated?
That's not, there's so many different views of people, how people feel about what they want their empty nester house to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that solution of a lot of empty bedrooms that you're not going to use. And yet your kids weigh in and they're like, I want a room. When I come, it's my room. And what that looks like is a lot of the process, actually. We design a house one way, then the budget comes in, and then it's like, okay, maybe we can combine the office with an extra bedroom when you need it. So there's as much about design as there is about creatively solving problems.
And that's life anyway. I mean, sooner or later, your kids are going to have kids. So where are you going to put the grandkids? Life is full of changes.
Yeah, it is.
So you got to be flexible.
Well, I grew up in Ohio, and my parents had the house, until they passed away. And we would all go there and we'd call it the flop house because we could go to my brother's house, which was nearby, but everyone wanted to be in that house, even though it was small. And you'd be all snuggly and watching a movie. And so people would just sleep on any horizontal surface. So I guess that's how we made that work.
And that was the house you grew up in?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, there's part of the appeal right
Yeah,
there.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and food. Good food.
Oh, of course.
My mom was Italian and always had a nice spread.
What's happening now with materials and technology that people should know about, Celeste?
Gosh, windows have been kind of changing through the years, which is how, especially on a show talking about modernism with sustainability, and then you look at all this glass, but windows have like more engineering, larger panes of glass and bigger openings that we used to not be able to do easily because there would always be a certain parameter to that. And then they got so big that they got heavy. And so now we have motorized window walls that we do a lot. And, even 3 years ago, that was sort of an extravagance, and now it's becoming kind of a norm.
What does the motor do?
It just opens the big heavy door for you. So you just press
It's
a
a
button.
giant window door kind of thing, usually.
Like at the
Yeah.
movie theater.
Yeah.
I guess. So in our Aspen project, the whole facade in the great room motorized and pocketed away to have this complete indoor-outdoor experience.
Yes, according to the book, Aspen is next door to Connectivity, Colorado. Just look for it on the highway.
So it's connecting literally when the glass wall pockets away.
So when people work with you, what rookie mistakes do owners make when they come to you for a house?
I don't know if it's a rookie mistake, but I would say try to explain the why, what you're trying to achieve instead of the how, because the how only answers one specific nuance to the project. And if something else changes, but to really understand and for yourself, even why is it that you're suggesting that? What is it you're trying to accomplish? I think those more open-ended advice leave everybody on the team with more options to give you what you want.
To paraphrase, function before form?
I don't usually like to follow one or the other completely. I think they both play a role.
But in what you're saying for advice, you want people to tell you what they want it to do, right?
Don't say specifically, can you put the island here? But explain, well, I would like the island here because it's really important for me to have guests circulate, and visit me here, or whatever it is that they're like, why they're offering that suggestion.
Right.
Try to always think about what it is you're trying to accomplish, because there might be even a bigger idea once the person knows what it is you're trying to achieve.
Right. Like my brother brings a 25-pound turkey every year, and we want to have it in a certain place to work on it. And that might not be an island.
That's a perfect example, better
Yeah.
than mine.
So far, what's been your largest project?
One that's not in the book. It's just completed. It's got almost 400 feet of lakefront outside of Chicago. It's a fabulous modern house that I can't wait to share. I would say it's about maybe 12,000 square feet.
Okay.
But I think for us, it still has a great scale. It's not over the top big. The spaces are still livable.
The book is The Meaningful Modern Home, Soulful Architecture and Interiors by Celeste Robbins. Celeste, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's fun to talk to you.
We were talking with Celeste Robbins.
Over the past 3 decades, the award-winning architects KAA Design have completed projects for the LA Museum of Art, Christie's Auction House, various Hugo Boss stores, and Modernist houses for clients such as Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Their newest book is Residing with Nature, The Houses of KAA Design. It's a follow-up to 2018's California Contemporary. After graduating from the Chadwick School in Palos Verdes,
Go Dolphins!
and earning a degree from USC,
Go Trojans!
Grant Kirkpatrick founded KAA in 1988 at the age of 24. In addition, he's had an outdoor furniture line for Design Within Reach. Welcome to the show, Grant.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Duan Tran graduated from Miami University
Go Redhawks!
and USC.
More Trojans!
Hey, he then joined KAA and was promoted to partner in 2017. His houses have been recognized by the AIA and have been featured in publications like Architectural Digest and Lux. And he's also sitting on a gold mine of hard-to-find architectural Lego sets. Welcome, Duan.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Duan, I have to ask about the Lego sets. I've seen photos of them online. You've got a bunch that have been discontinued and are worth quite a lot now.
Yes, I do. It's been a passion project of mine, and I'm, much like many young architects, we kind of grew up with Legos. That was kind of our first introduction to design. And I would say over the last however many decades, it's one of those things that I've kind of never lost in terms of that childhood joy, and something I'm proud that I've been able to pass along and share with my 3 young daughters.
You never really grew up.
Never grew up.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Now, are these legal Lego sets? Are you in cooperation with the folks over in Denmark?
Yeah, I don't think he's getting them on the black market, Tom.
Okay.
No, these are all on the up and up. So.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Now, how many do you have?
Oh my, more than I could probably mention. I basically have every single one of them at this point in time.
Okay.
So it's become one of those things where I've either bought them for myself, or my friends who know me have basically bought me the ones that I can't get a hold of. So I've been pretty blessed in that front.
Did you and your daughters ever buy one of the gigantic ones that are like 20,000 pieces and try to put them together?
We have all of them.
All of them, really?
We just built the Coliseum, and actually we're working on the Cathedral right now.
It took the Romans a long time to do that, so I'm guessing
it did. It took a while, but we're getting through it faster.
Have you done any of the flower arrangements, the plants?
Have not. I got to draw
They're
the line
pretty
somewhere.
great.
Yeah, they have a lot of little pieces, but they're pretty.
Now, Grant, your firm started doing commercial projects mostly and has transitioned to doing mostly houses. What caused that?
Well, actually, we started in 1988 with a house. We started with a commitment for a single-family home, and we kind of built from there. It quickly led into a lot of opportunity in retail and did a lot of mixed use. But all the while, we were doing custom homes, remodels, and ground up. And then in the 2008, 9, 10 Great Recession, as it were, we kind of peeled back. We were 85 people, pretty diversified. And over the course of those 3 years, we peeled back and figured out that, what we were doing best were homes. For some reason, we have really good success with high maintenance clients, and they like that.
Mm-hmm.
High expectation, high maintenance. And so we locked down at that point on just doing homes. And it was sort of a career defining time where we said, I think we were put on this planet to do one thing really well. Let's just do that.
And when you're dealing with some of the high-end people like the celebrities, Are you working with them directly or with managers of those folks?
Well, both, but we're always working with our clients directly. In fact, we don't even do spec homes or we do nothing but really unique sites and unique desires to do something special. It's kind of the ingredient that brings us to the table. If someone has a special piece of property and they want to do something unique, we typically fit that bill or on that consideration. So we get to work with our clients really closely, regardless of what profession they're expert in. Being in Southern California, there's incredible diversity of expertises and businesses. So our clients are kind of a cross section of so many different industries. So it's really pretty amazing. We work very closely for several years with folks who are doing their possibly single biggest discretionary expenditure of their lives. So it's a lot. It's a lot to be responsible for. They end up being pretty close relationships.
Duan, what is the trend here? Is it mostly second homes you guys are doing or first homes, primary homes?
It's funny. If you had asked us this question maybe 10 or so years ago, I would say it was the first home, right? But, to the fact that we've been here for 3 decades and running, it's interesting that we're actually doing a lot of second and third homes now for the same families. And so that's kind of been fun to kind of go through that process, not only the first time when they're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they're unaware of how this process works and everything's new, to where now they're a little bit more savvy and they understand a little bit more about what they're looking to get out of the design process. And, we've been fortunate to be able to be partners with them for a second and third time, and even generationally doing things for their children now. Has been kind of a very interesting dynamic for us, especially given the fact that we do only residential and all this is lifestyle driven. So it's been an interesting mix as we've kind of gotten into it. And I have to imagine that's going to continue as long as we're around. So
hope so.
And Grant, do people tend to make their second homes larger than their first home or smaller? How does it go?
That's a great question.
That is a great question. I don't know that they're bigger or smaller. They're always unique to their locale, right? So we might think of this second home as being somewhere up in the Rockies or down on the coast, but oftentimes it's the reverse. And I think, I'd like to say our clients are size agnostic. It's really more about the lifestyle and in that particular location. We end up doing a separate, very orchestrated vision process for every one of our projects. So whether it's their first home or their third home, every project goes through it's almost like scripting a movie. Before we draw or conceive of anything, we are actually mining the story of what is this client's experience at this particular location. Yeah. Sometimes I think of us as archaeologists in the beginning, rather than
it's archaeology in its essence.
Oh. But if we build the story, then the right thing comes from that.
Well, you could do like Richard Neutra did and just go live with the clients for a weekend and observe them in action.
One of our
I don't know if our HR department would sign off on that, but we'll keep it in our consideration.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So are the Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, Julia Louis-Dreyfuses of the world, are they just like you and me? Or are they better?
All 3 of those could be your brother or sister, and you wouldn't blink twice. They're super good people. We are pretty blessed. I mean, you're based in this town, and although our work takes us outside of the state and outside of the country, there's obviously in this area a significant entertainment clientele. And, we've been blessed. We've done 1 or 2 with these folks, and they tell these folks, and, they all kind of end up at the same parties or awards programs or whatever they do. Right. So it's been nice. And people like Tom Hanks, I mean, it's just as you see, they couldn't be any sweeter of a guy. Great vision, obviously, right? I mean, really after something special.
I think he's a serial modernist. He's had a couple of modern houses.
Yeah. Tom and Rita, they're very design savvy.
When clients come to you, I mean, other than a nice budget, what would you like them to know or be able to articulate to you early on?
Wow, great question. I think a lot of it, and this maybe goes back into a little bit of what Grant was mentioning about the archaeology, but Clients who know what they don't like is actually really, really helpful for us when we get out of the box, because so much of what we do is about the possibilities. It's the what ifs. And so as much as we try to, develop a process and a collaboration that really engenders that level of conversation, the more we understand where some of the bumpers are sometimes in terms of how to guide that process and things that they're not interested in is really helpful for us as we kind of get out of the box. And so it's kind of like this interesting dynamic with clients oftentimes, because they want to get all of our great ideas, but sometimes parameters do help a little bit. And so having a client that understands enough about themselves to say, appreciate that, but that's not really where we want to go. We'd really love to explore it this way is really another great way to kind of go about it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Our clients, the number one thing that our clients do that help us do our best work is they have trust.
Yeah.
And I don't use that term lightly. I know it's a wordle word and comes about all the time, but trust is when they say, hey, we like what you do. And we have faith that what you're going to do here is not the same thing, because you don't do the same thing. We don't wake up in the morning and ever do the same thing.
Right.
Not a great way to have a business.
Nothing but prototypes.
It's what gets us up in the morning. But they have this level of faith that we're going to find the one and only best solution, the best creative answer to this special property and their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And what is the biggest challenge right now? I know that during the pandemic, for instance, it was getting materials. Sometimes it's labor. Sometimes it's the ongoing approval process through a city. What is the issue right now in your projects? What takes the longest or is the biggest headache?
That's easy.
Yeah, well, it's all the things that you mentioned, but I would say inflation and the cost of construction right now is a challenging thing to manage. Just when you think you kind of know what it is, and we've got a lot of great resources and we're involved in a lot of different projects in different areas, it still feels like a very difficult thing to pin down and help manage a client's expectations right now. So there's no doubt that's been the most challenging aspect. And to what Grant mentioned as well, the hard thing is that even though we do homes, we've been doing this for 3+ decades, the fact is every single home's a prototype. And so I wish to say there was a playbook that we can go to and say, well, it cost this much last time, so it should cost this much again. There's too many variables, to the benefit of the project and to the uniqueness of the client that sometimes does kind of bring in that kind of variable of the unknown. And so the areas where it manifests itself very quickly is cost. And that's just an aspect of the project that we need to be very proactive and front end on.
So with a little inside baseball, what's one trick that you guys use all the time to reduce cost on a project and still look great?
Well, I think the answer to that is one word. It's simplicity. A great design doesn't need to be complicated. In fact, great design wants to be simple so that our eye can conceive it as a beautiful object, right? Or a beautiful ensemble. And oftentimes, especially when you're doing the type of work we do, which is warm, modernist, Neutra, Schindler, derivative kind of thing, you come up with an idea. And if that idea is powerful in its simplicity, then everything follows suit. It doesn't need complexity. It doesn't need to be adorned. It doesn't need to be overtly detailed. The beauty is in the assembly and the massing and the scale that pleases the eye. So I think it starts there. Of course, the other one would be, look, if you don't need it, don't build it, because cost comes down to square footage.
Yeah.
And the more square footage you have, the more the cost. So it's really about, look, maybe you do need 6 bedrooms, or maybe you do need his and her offices and this world-class primary suite closet. But in the end, what is important, and therefore, what's going to feel good, where you don't need a house that's too big,
right?
Because big is expensive, and not just in making it, but also managing it and maintaining it over time.
Yeah.
And going back to that thing you said earlier about learning what the client doesn't like, keeps you from going down a bunch of dead ends and wasting time, makes it more efficient.
Absolutely.
You read their minds.
Right.
That's right.
Now, guys, at what point do your clients realize that they really are saving money by hiring you versus going out and just buying something off the shelf?
I think most of our clients are going to take the long view.
Right.
They're going to look at not just cost, but more in the terms of investment. And they're investing into something that literally manifest their life, right? They're in and around this environs that we're conceiving and executing for them that's going to affect their life and their family's life. And probably as they pass these heirlooms along, because we like to say we do heirlooms. These homes they're here to stay. So they're looking at that not just as an investment, but also a little bit of a legacy thing. So for instance, they want to build these homes right. Typically, our clients are very interested in these homes being as sustainable and earth-friendly as possible. That doesn't mean we're going out trying to win awards with green certification or whatever, but we're being very conscious of how to incorporate materials and systems that make the home and the estate, respectable to the earth. And one of the ways to do that is not just geothermal heating, cooling, and photovoltaic electricity and FSC certified materials. It's also building the house for the long run. So our homes, they're going to be there for 100 years, but probably 200 years.
Yeah.
Maybe not 500 years, who knows? But these homes are built to last. And that's probably the most sustainable and environmentally respectful thing that you can do. Have the truck come for that project once, not 4 other times in the next couple hundred years.
At this point, how many houses have you guys got in queue for 2025 and 2026?
Domestically, probably 15 to 20.
15 or 20.
And then internationally,
maybe half a dozen.
We're very fortunate in that, people all over the world look to Southern California for lifestyle. And our clients have approached us from all over the world to get that lifestyle. Even though they may be in a climate where that lifestyle might be 2 months out of the year, they still want that California indoor-outdoor feel. So we're doing these things in Dubai and Japan and Costa Rica and the Bahamas and Minnesota and places where you wouldn't ordinarily think a California modernist home would be. But
you had me till Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yes.
Lake Minnetonka, doing a beautiful project there. And they can't find the type of design style locally. And because of technology today and the way things work, we're able to do our work all over the world. And it's been very rewarding, frankly. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, Duan and Grant, thanks so much for talking with us. I do encourage you to ask HR and see if you guys can start visiting your clients, because it's going to get even more refined than it is now.
Might want to ask the clients, too.
Well, yeah, but you got to work through the proper channels, Tom.
Right.
That's right.
All right. Well, we're on it, George. Thank you.
Yeah.
Originally from California, Lisa Gralnek is the host of Future of XYZ, a podcast exploring the intersection of architecture, design, and technology. Now in its 6th season, Lisa interviews visionary leaders in all 3 of those fields. She's also the principal and founder of LVG & Company, specializing in brand building and business strategy. With a background in political science and French from Bates College.
Go Bobcats!
Or as they say in France, les links rouges. And she has an MBA from the prestigious Euro Business School, INSEAD. Lisa has held senior roles at Walmart, Chobani, Moo.com, Adidas, and the Boston Consulting Group. She writes for SOCAP Global and Financial Times. Here's George's conversation with Lisa Gralnek.
Lisa, our research team was looking at your background and found something very interesting I wanted you to tell me about. I didn't know that Walmart numbered their stores. You worked at Walmart store number 8, right?
I love that your research team came up with that. Walmart does number their stores, but number 8 is in fact a testament to one of the original Walmart test stores. The store number 8 that I worked for was actually a ring-fenced entity under Walmart that was dealing with their future of retail project that were completely under embargo and were entirely ring-fenced from the rest of Walmart, and we're looking at retail ideas 10 to 15 plus years from scale. So that was the store number 8 that I worked at. It was an incubator for all intents and purposes within Walmart, but it referenced the store number 8, which was one of the original concept stores of Walmart.
So is this like a secret store, a secret group within Walmart doing like, underground experiments kind of thing for the future?
There was nothing too secretive about it. It was reporting to Mark Laurie, who was the founder of Jet.com, but it was running a lot of research through entrepreneurs and things who were looking at things like last mile shipping, drone delivery, restocking by robots, things like this, and just testing it and learning it.
Oh, that is so cool. Now, did you have some kind of sexy, evil villain lair location you did all this out of?
We were original remote workers, but the store number 18 was largely based actually in New Jersey at the Jet.com location. So not so secret.
Okay. Tell me about IF Design.
IF Design was founded in 1953. It came out of the post-war period when the Brits were still in charge of Europe and Northern Europe and trying to figure out how to re-energize the German and Northern European economy, and said, hey, this is still the center for industrial design and industrial manufacturing. How do we reestablish that growth sector in the economy? And said, we're going to establish Hanover, Germany as the headquarters for the Hanover Messe. And the Messe being the trade fair. And that it still runs, it's a lot smaller, but it was the original industrial design trade fair where a lot of Bauhaus founders and such were showing their wares, and where IF became the first ever award component at the Hanover Messe. So IF is Industrieform. So again, like the form, the award for the industrial design. And for the last almost 2 years now, we have been running the IF Design Award. We are owned by the German certified nonprofit IF Design Foundation. And the foundation is dedicated to design research and education. And we run the IF Design Award. That's our primary kind of brand, if you will, and product, with 82 categories of design, everything from product and packaging to communications design, architecture, service design, UX, etc. But we also run a social impact award that we've been doing since 2017, and a student award we've been doing since 2002. And both of those are laddering to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So how does design solve the biggest challenges that the world faces? The IF Design Foundation also hosts an annual trend report, which is a very robust research document on macro trends that are impacting the world. Human digital interplay, workplace development, sustainability, the built environment, all sorts of macro trends. And soon we'll be coming out with the IF Design Academy, which will be teaching business to designers.
And when did your podcast start?
Future of XYZ, I started at the height of the pandemic during lockdown, when I was having conversations with super interesting people like yourself. I was writing a lot and I was having these conversations, and I decided, why not record the conversations? And that eventually became a podcast. So in November of 2020, when we're recording this, I'm just releasing our 132nd episode. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Season 6, which started in September of 2024, is presented by IF Design. So now much more focused, instead of on governmental and scientific topics, in addition to the arts and design and culture and creativity and all the things that we've always been talking about. We're now really much more focused on the design broadly. And we're part of Sandow's podcast network called Surround Podcast Network as well.
And who have some of your guests been on the show?
Oh, gosh. Since our inception, we've had the former CEO of Danone, so Dannon, like the big dairy company, who is also one of the first B corporations. She was my first guest, Lorna Davis. We've had the CEO of 1% for the Planet, which is a nonprofit that was founded by Patagonia's founder, Yves Chouinard, where companies like LVG & Co., my former consultancy, give 1% of our gross revenues to environmental causes every year. We've had the former ambassador to the OECD, U.S. ambassador to the OECD. We've had the former head of infectious disease at the CDC, prior to Fauci, obviously, talking about COVID. We've had the creative director at NASA. We've had...
Well, I bet that person that was previous to COVID was going, phew, I'm glad I missed that one.
He was, although it's one of my favorite episodes, because we did the interview in November of 2021, and he assured me that 1 year from then, we would no longer be wearing masks in public. We would no longer be talking about it in every conversation, and it would no longer be a pandemic, but an epidemic. And I was thinking, yeah, right. And sure enough, it was 10 months later that I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, he was correct. So
wow.
I love having these conversations.
Yeah. That's so cool. So how often do you do the show?
In its first inceptions through the beginning of 2023, or really the end of 2022, we release a new episode every week, every Thursday. When PBS licensed it starting in January of 2023, I swapped down to every other week.
Okay.
And now we are continuing that. Season 6 and 7 are also every other week. So every other Thursday, we release a new episode.
Oh, that's so cool. I have learned that you are a triple Libra, which means, folks, that her sun and moon and rising sign are all in Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus, the planet of love and beauty, which means Libras want to be surrounded by beautiful things, trying to create balance and harmony wherever they go. A triple Libra will have an intense focus on making life beautiful. So what's the most beautiful thing going on for you lately?
Oh man, I love that question. I love bringing astrology into everything, especially my triple Libra-ness. I have to say, George, that there is nothing more beautiful, no matter what, than nature. Nature is utterly perfect. I don't know why man feels the need to mess with it. I am a flower junkie. I am a sky junkie. I am an ocean or any moving water junkie. And in this kind of winter season, when I live now in New England, even though I grew up in Southern California, so we had no such thing as winter, I now have seasons, and I really love looking out at wherever I am and seeing kind of the changing sky and the changing scenery as it evolves. So I think the most beautiful thing that we have going for us is nature.
In talking to all these great guests and designers and people that are influential, what do you see coming up? Is it an AI revolution? Is it a movement away from social media? I mean, what do you think?
Oh man, I mean, I see so many things coming, and because Future of XYZ is really this vessel that holds anything. We've had topics that range from science and technology and innovation all the way to government and politics, but also design writ large and singularly. I was asked last fall to put together a presentation for some architecture and design experts or executives really on the future of marketing. And as a former and current marketer, I could have pulled a lot of things together, but I went back through what was then 125 episodes and kind of analyzed the transcripts using AI, thankfully, and then really looking at it myself. And I came up with a bunch of thematics. I came up with 7 major takeaways that these are the future of marketing, but I actually think that these are the future of everything. Some of them have to do with, obviously like emerging technologies. I mean, it is just constantly evolving. There is no slowing this down, whether we are going to lean in on social media or lean out on social media. When we lean out on social media, it will go to something else. Like technology is here to stay. AR, VR, AI is going to be integrated into everything. Blockchain, deep tech. I mean, even like, the COVID vaccine was part of deep tech and biological technologies. So I think emerging technology is a big piece of this. I think capital and access is huge, like both capital money, is always going to drive things and drive innovation and affordability. But I think also access being like, how do you access your audiences? How do you access learning? That's going to be a huge piece of this. I think planet Earth is my number one stakeholder and my number one trend. I mean, we need to take care of her. Otherwise, I don't know what really
I think she needs a better
there.
Attorney.
I think she needs a better support network, a better board of directors.
Yeah.
We're not doing a very good job, that's for sure.
No, she's overheating a lot, I've heard.
She's overheating a lot, and no one wants to talk about it, which is really a shame. And I think these are really macro trends that are happening that we all need to embrace. I think that there are other things that I don't even talk about in that presentation that are really important that we've been hearing about from people, which is like education. How do you get educated on everything from design, frankly, and raise the next generation of designers who understand what it means to do design? I mean, especially like things like typography, where people don't learn to write in school anymore. Like you don't have a cursive class. So how do you actually learn the basics of typography and brand? You have authenticity, which everyone talks about, but I'm not sure that we can teach that. You have customer centricity, which is, a big topic everywhere. It doesn't matter which company you're talking about. Like, how do you put the customer at the center? Data is, again, coming back to the technology side. I mean, there's so many things that people are talking about. But at the end of the day, I think what everyone I invite on are conscious of this access piece, the audience that they're talking to. Education is a mandate, authenticity, and kind of doing good for the world that we live in. I think that's probably self-selective, though.
Yes, indeed. So let me ask just a quick question about authenticity, since you've talked with a lot of guests about this on your show. So what is the difference between being authentic and kind of being a jerk and having a more refined sense of behavior? Because I know some people that are being very authentic and they're quite unpleasant to be around.
I mean, look, I'm fully supportive of just being who you are. If you're a jerk, be a jerk, At least people then can choose, if I'd rather someone just be who they are. But I do think that there's this push, especially in younger generations, of like authenticity gives permission to be an asshole. I hope I'm allowed to say that.
You are.
Being authentic isn't about like pushing the most extreme version of yourself, And I think in the social media hyped world that we live in, where everyone has to be a personality and a celebrity and whatever else, I feel like maybe authenticity has gotten bastardized. I mean, I think of authenticity, I've been talking about, I wrote a senior thesis on it in college, a long time ago.
Was that back during the Eisenhower administration?
Yeah, it wasn't quite that far, but pretty close. U.S. modernist movement.
Right.
But I think, honestly, I think about authenticity largely in terms of brands, and people as brands these days make it an extreme. Authenticity in branding is like, how do you color within certain lines, right? You can't be everything to everyone. And authenticity in branding allows you to create a container, a vessel of that brand and give it sort of a personality and a hype and a persona, if you will, and then color within those lines. It provides certain measures. Whereas if you're an individual and you're like, well, my authenticity as a brand, I'm like, humans aren't supposed to be brands, first of all, in my world. I mean, I know in the influencer and celebrity world, that's the way it goes.
I'm
and then
so
I
glad
think you
you
become
said
extreme. Why is that?
Because it's so rarely said these days that individuals shouldn't be brands.
I think it's probably counterintuitive. I mean, most people who are listening to this who know me would be like, well, you're building yourself a personal brand. And you'd be like, well, I mean, that's why I'm on the show. And it's like, no, I'm just sharing what I think and what I know. And I don't need to be a brand for that to be the case. My podcast isn't a brand either. It's just a name of a podcast that has interesting content. I think a brand, IF Design, is a nonprofit, and IF Design stands for something. And we have a design award, the IF Design Award, and we have all these different things. I am a big believer that brand is something very specific, and we probably don't have time fully to get into it, George, but as a brand builder who's worked at companies started in fashion, so rebranding Burberry and rebranding or building the retail brand for David Yurman and building Britney Spears at the height of her career, or launching Talk Magazine in my early career days, but then also in later years working as the vice president of brand and innovation at Chobani and working at Adidas and relaunching the Rockport shoes brand. Like, these are brands to me that need to have a refined and concentric, very clear position in market. And that's what the brand does. It's like, how do people perceive you and receive you, and how are you going after that? And something like IF as a nonprofit, sure, you have a brand, but you don't need to be branded in the same sense as a Nike, as an Adidas. You're not in these sneaker war type situations, and individuals shouldn't be at war with each other. We should be supporting each other. So I don't see the need to have a brand.
Well said. Thank you, Lisa. This has been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks. So as you know, you caught me completely unprepared, George. So thanks for letting me riff.
The podcast is The Future of XYZ, and you can find it on all the major podcast platforms.
And YouTube.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Okay, Tom, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Trustworthy is her middle name. Or it could be Tabitha. We really don't know. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another Do What Your Dad Says edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.
Thanks, Dad.